you go to school? And who's your dad?
What do you think of what's going on right now, mate?
These evil little invisible parasites.
Satan-worshipping Freemason morons.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
We're not run by factions.
Get the fuck out of camera!
There are much more powerful international forces in play.
Is this pink guy? Is this what pink guy is? I don't fucking know what's happening.
Please go outside and look at the moon quickly.
It's been crazy, guys, but guess what? It's how it is, mate.
Mate, because I want to do you slowly.
But I ain't spending any time on it.
Welcome to the Conditional Release Program, a podcast that delves into the netherworld of cults, crims, and con artists. I'm Jack the Insider, otherwise known as Paedo for tax purposes.
And I'm Joel Hill, and today we've got Sovereigns in Parliament, and Jack has been disturbed by social media.
Yeah, social media is a fucking disgrace, and if that Zuckerberg lad came up to governments around the world in 1998 and said, hey, I've got a great idea which will help people connect, but might come at the cost of global sanity. You'd kick Zuck to death there and then. Good. It's all your fault, Tism boy.
Uh-huh.
But sadly, he was allowed to press on, and as a result, I have had to watch pedo bashings and jumped up crooks filming people who don't want to be filmed, all in the name of freedom.
It's a fucked up world, Jack. And it's only getting worse when Jack is angry. Oh, but beer will help.
Beer will help.
It'll calm you down. Similar to the diazepam, but better. And not just Jack, but everyone. You can all do this. Unlike Jack, the only one of, well, a few of you who can have the diazepam. It's in the bathroom cupboard just to the left. And I've heard that they serve a delightful beer at Old Parliament House alongside some cucumber sandwiches and some hanging ropes. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you will in a second. It's fucked up. Our first story is really bad. Anyway, CDCO had nothing to do with that. So a reward for their lack of subsidiary, buy their beer. Just, chip in. And we will, in turn, reward you with a discount code, CRB10.
It will make you more angry and then less.
Exactly. And you'll have more money to buy more Valium. I don't know why I went on the Valium thing. I think that's what we're talking about earlier. Anyway, buy a couple of cases, preserve Australian democracy, and do something useful with your life, like buy CBCO beer. Thank you.
And, of course, you can support the Conditional Release Program podcast by joining our Patreon, where, for as little as 5 sovs, you can access all sorts of bonus content, and I can pay for the therapy I so badly need.
Yeah, I can buy CBCO beer with it. Just go to patreon.com/conditional release program, Google it, whatever, and become one of us, please.
One of us.
Yeah, no, seriously, do it. All right, well, look, we have to drop the cult-like behaviour just for a moment so we can get on with the show, which starts with our old mate Solicits behaving badly, as usual, but in a place where Solicits usually are normally not allowed to enter.
Not allowed in.
No, past discrepancies.
Now, listeners, if you're hopping mad right now at all the child abductions, the pedophilia that only occurs at the highest level of Australian politics and society, if you're angry about being held under the yoke of an illegal government that tried to kill you with vaccines, then why not enter a parliament and indict every single one of the fuckers for treason while having the whole thing catered, coffee, tea, a few dainty sangers with the crust cut off,
nice,
and according to our sources, chocolate brownies, not supplied by the caterer, but by one of your Sovsets. And said brownies are said to have had a psychoactive effect on one of our sources who was watching this shit show unfold in the confines of the old Senate courtyard at Old Parliament House.
Yep, it was an undisclosed psychoactive effect as well. They fucking spiked the brownies. Anyway, allegedly.
Certainly nothing to do with the caterers. We don't want to have any trouble with them. I'm sure.
No, absolutely not.
They don't sell weed brownies.
No.
As a rule,
I'm
I
sure
wouldn't
they're
imagine.
Both innocent and litigious of this bizarre crime. And yeah, anyway. So yes, 200 or so freed and loved pseudo-law adherents gathered at Magna Carta Place, the hallowed halls of Australian democracy. And the Sovereigns love it there, 1066 and all that.
It's actually called Magna Carta Place. I did
Is
not
it
know
actually?
this.
I thought you were kidding.
No, it's actually called the gardens outside the Parliament, at the old Parliament, are known as Magna Carta Place.
How funny and dumb. Well, I guess Magna Carta
is so apt, isn't it? The Sovsets love the Magna Carta as much as they go for 17th century Portuguese maritime law.
Of course.
only 100 of the estimated 200 who turned up at Magna Carta Place were allowed into the old Parliament House because that's all they booked for. But having booked, and we'll get to that shortly, how that all happened, 100 did roll in and proceeded to indict every single current federal parliamentarian, and there's 227 of those.
Busy.
Assorted XPMs from John Howard onwards.
Fair.
Governors General, current and past, governors,
Fair.
scientists, and disturbingly, lawyers, court officers, and child protection staff.
Well,
and
last
they're
one's
all
bad.
been sentenced to the off. Well, charged with treason, democide,
That's so
shitload
good.
of murder and mayhem, terrible stuff with kiddies, a lot of baby eating.
Yes. Well, I think maybe we've embellished a little bit there at the end, but maybe the lawyer part isn't so. Anyway, 100 soft sits also, well, I mean, they probably counted them, led by friends of the podcast, Carl Leibold, the
Carl with a
self-dubbed.
Q.
Oh, yeah, exactly. He's the self-dubbed voice of freedom who emceed along with Donna Markwell and Peter Horton from the Corruption Whistleblower newspaper with matching cars. Really very funny if you can see them. And also online for anyone interested, but isn't it lovely that they still have a print edition?
Yeah, warms
That's nice.
warms the cockles of my heart, Joel.
Me
to see
too.
someone still in print.
It's nice to see the printing press is still hot at night. You know, that is God's work. God's work is also fighting a cabal of pedophiles. But
Yes.
keeping the printing press warm is next to that.
Next
In-
thing,
in-
right,
in-
right up there.
Yeah, it's very
100
important.
soft sits were welcomed into the old Parliament House, a.k.a. the Museum of Australian Democracy, MOAD for short, because Canberra loves acronyms.
Yes.
I can advise that the booking was made, this is what I was told, directly with the caterers attached to MOAD under the name GJI.
That sounds right.
No one
fine.
really asked or checked what GJI was,
Yeah.
but it does stand for Grand Jury Indictment. But the catering folks at MOAD didn't know this.
No, neither did I, to be fair.
No, I didn't either.
And
When it was
yeah.
explained to me, I actually, when you say GJI, it's actually hard to know which letters have been pronounced. And I went, what? And it was GJI, Grand Jury Indictment. I went, okay.
Okay, cool.
Now, the official statement from MOAD was sent to me on Monday after I'd made inquiries of the what the fuck nature of the museum's management.
Poor
And the statement
bastards.
reads, Joel,
The Old Parliament House has several event spaces available for public hire managed through a third-party contractor. The event on Saturday, 8 February 2025 was booked using an acronym. Once
GJI.
Old Parliament House staff identified the intent of the event, they immediately increased security arrangements to ensure the event ended peacefully and without incident. As a result, Old Parliament House will be reviewing event booking processes with a view to adding an extra layer of oversight. The event does not align with the role of Old Parliament House. Our role is to strengthen understanding of Australia's democratic system.
of course. And I'll be perfectly honest.
That's all fair.
MOAD does, it's a lovely place. If you're ever in Canberra, go and pay it a visit. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And of course, the building itself is just steeped in history. We'll get to that in a little bit. But the mob did assemble, 200 odd, I'd say, because there were at least 100 who were excluded. Some turned up with their dogs. Can we go in the old Parliament with our dogs?
It's a
And I
service
thought,
dog. Shut up, it's a
not
service
really.
dog.
Has
It's
your
legal.
dog got a booking? Has your dog got a booking?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
so they had to wait outside. But they're always meant to do their performative lunacy out in the fresh air, out
Yes.
in Magna Carta Court. But a more recent poster hinted at a big surprise. And we think that's when the booking was made. Not sure. Probably, though. They did it through the caterers. And when they turned up, the small number of security there noticed the red ensigns and the Paedo posters and knew they were in for a tough afternoon.
Literal red flags. Yeah, it's not
Our
good.
sources at the scene tell us that there were maybe as many as 6 security staff present that afternoon, and clearly that number would not be enough to remove the soft seats from the building. You need 100-person strong riot squad to evict, and it would not be good for the decor. I think we can all agree to that.
Yes.
So the event was allowed to proceed.
Yeah, you'd need 100 cops just to argue with them.
What?
You know, like that's just that's the nature of the situation.
Besides taking the booking without any real detail, I don't think that MOAD made too many mistakes, because once it happened, one thing they did do was call police. So the feds
Yeah.
turned up there in an observatory capacity. And then they realised that they really had to let this proceed because to stop it would have caused all sorts of problems.
They're
So I
kind
think
of victims in this. They got duped, right? And that's
they got duped, GJI.
Yeah. And look, cookers do this though. What we have, which have a system, this is the same thing that's happening in the US. We have a system based on a certain level of trust where we don't have explicit checks and balances on certain things because there's just this idea that you're probably not a fuckwit and that's cool. So okay, Old Parliament House, as if you're going to have a bunch of salt sits book at Old Parliament House. Who would do that? And then you're like, oh, we live in this world now. Now everything has to be checked because adults can't be trusted to be decent.
Exactly right. And I'd also say it's part of that sort of Canberra naivety as well.
Yeah.
That you probably don't see in the capital cities. And they go, you want to book him for 100? Oh, lovely.
Oh, nice. Would you like
What
cucumber or salami?
GJI?
Oh,
What's
nice.
the stamp? Doesn't matter. What's your
Oh,
mobile phone?
Nice.
What's your mobile phone number? And so that's the way it proceeded. So it was unsightly. It was terribly unseemly that in this magnificent building with so much history, we had these lunatics running around indicting virtually every senior politician in the country.
Well, look, on the positive side, nothing was burned.
Not this time. Now,
No.
look, unconfirmed, we do think that at least 3 or 4 people who were present at the old Parliament House when it was torched in, 2021, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Late in 2021. I think it was December 31 in 2021. A number of those had returned for another look. They fixed the doors at a cost of $5.3 million.
Jesus, why do doors cost so much?
hell.
The tradies have a lot to answer
went
for.
to jail.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. Buddy got real lucky on that one. Oh, bless. Anyway, so look, I think there are wider implications at play
I think
here.
there are.
I think we've focused on a narrow set of catering-related mistakes. Let's talk power. Let's talk real power. Let's talk who's in trouble. Because I have heard on the grapevine, amusingly, Senator Ralphie Babbitt has also been indicted for treason. Now, that just makes me so sad. Saying it ain't so zippy. It can't be true. Now, look, I've got some advice for you, buddy. Just do the same thing you did when you got caught with pingers at Stereosonic. For the record, that never happened. I don't think it happened. Maybe it did.
Or maybe,
Tell them nothing.
Maybe
Take
those
them nowhere.
domestic violence cases.
Oh, yeah, there is that. Look, just think of all those sort of rap songs you listen to on a regular basis and completely miss the point of. Something snitches. Just unravel that and just keep your fat, dumb potato mouth shut, Zippy.
Comment.
No, just don't even say that. Say nothing. But of course you can't say nothing because you're a fucking jerk.
This is
I hate
true.
him so much.
But I just wonder if there's any one of our listeners out there who'd be willing to provide Senator Ralphie Babbitt with an alibi. No questions asked. And if so, please get in touch through our socials.
All right, yeah, guys, let's get Ralphie Babbitt off Australia. Oh, no, not like that. I don't mean get it. No, because he's probably got a lot of. I don't think he's had sex in a long time. Anyway, look, let's get him off the charges. Okay, let's get him off the charge. If you want to get him off, that is your business. I wouldn't recommend going anywhere near whatever lurks in his pants. Anyway, look, let's get him off the charges.
Let's get him off the charges.
He didn't do any of this treason.
No.
He's actually a staunch patriot.
He is.
He's a staunch patriot.
I don't think he's capable of committing treason.
No, definitely
But
not.
of course,
And,
he was part of the 227, and all they'd done with their indictments, and I did see the list of them, was just basically republish the APH website.
That's very funny.
Parliamentary.
What about like
Parliament
Antic
House
and all those
website.
guys? They suck up to them
Yeah,
so
all of
much.
them. Every single one of them.
You'd be so upset.
So there were no exceptions for
Rennick,
or Antic or Pauline or Malcolm. Poor
Malcolm.
Malcolm's going to be charged with treason. Little teeny weeny. He's not going to survive in prison.
Imagine the look on his
He's gonna
face. It could be
survive in
slightly
Salford
different.
Prison.
Yeah, well, yeah. No, he would though. He'd be good. He would know all the magic words to get around being eaten alive. But then again, he is so similar to a toilet brush. He may end up being mistaken for one. So who knows?
As Moed's statement says, protocols on taking bookings on the basis of an acronym and presumably a mobile phone number will have to change. The organisers of this fucking travesty were patting themselves on the back on their socials last time we looked. Yeah, do you see, Joe? A lot of self-congratulation going on there.
I don't blame them, but it's pretty fucking gross. It's very
And
juvenile.
to them, they are the heroes who stormed the citadel of Australian parliamentary democracy.
It's our own J6. It's with cucumber sandwiches instead of, Nancy
with-
Pelosi's
with
broken
the-
fucking laptop.
With crustless sandwiches.
Oh,
Yes,
God.
like, what a fucking shambles. And this is the place where Enid Lyons became the first woman MP, where Curtin and Chifley stood, where Menzies lied to the Parliament claiming the US had requested Australia's military involvement in Vietnam when no such correct request was ever made.
Oh, that's so
This is the
bad.
place where the great E.G. Whitlam proud the Parliament, wiping the floor with his opponents, where Hawke pointed to the National Party members on the opposition benches, referring to it as Cocky's Corner, which I always laughed.
Yeah.
Where Bill Hayden referred to National Party leader Ian Sinclair, who was involved in a probate scandal after the death of his father, as, and I quote Bill Hayden, stealing the pennies from a dead man's eyes.
Oh, that is poetry.
By the way, Bill Hayden was on the list as a former Governor-General, I presume, was on the list for treason charges. He's been dead for 18 months. Guys, I mean, do your own research, but still.
Yeah, I know, right? Fucking useless.
It was a place, of course, where Paul Keating, who with Hawke straddled the old and new parliament and routinely flogged his opponents in both forums, and the steps on which Gough made the speech, well, may we say, God save the Queen, because nothing will save the Governor-General.
Yeah,
After John Kerr had sacked his government with the connivance of the Chief Justice of the High Court, Sir Garfield Barwick, we remember you, and Buckingham Palace.
And, of course, the CIA.
Allegedly.
I don't know. I actually don't really know that conspiracy theory.
Well, if you want to have a look at a film called The Falcon and the Snowman, an old film now, what's his name? Sean Penn's in it. Actually, really gives a very good performance.
Will this
And
make me more or less pilled?
He played the pilled guy who had a friend who was working for CIA, basically dispatches.
Interesting.
And the guy, I'm just trying to think of the actor, it doesn't matter who played him, decides that, his country is sort of lying to the public and he wants to do something about it. So they start by selling secrets or attempting to sell secrets to the Russians or the Soviets back then through their Mexican embassy.
Oh, yeah.
And part of that program, if you watch carefully, is that one of the things that made this CIA data analyst feel betrayed was that the CIA were on the move in Australia to remove the Whitlam government.
There you go. I love that. I just, the idea that if Whitlam got his way and we had that sort of nationalised minerals approach, would just be so...
Worth a look to film for all sorts of reasons, but that one in particular.
If anything, just to give me more brainworms. Anyway, look, this place, it reeks of history and I love it. I want to get back down there as soon as possible so I can have a cucumber sandwich where great men have stood and...
Maybe a brownie.
A lot of solid seats as well. Two very separate entities, I must admit. Do you have the joint stained by the presence of solicits and Q-line lunatics moaning about a fictitious list of 28 names? They don't really know who's on it. Richie Benno or some shit. And, of course, this is a real kicker, routinely harassing child protection workers.
Yeah, that's the worst part of what they do.
And this is when they're making the fucking desperate last resort steps of removing children from negligent parents who are dangerous. You guys... That's a bit of a paradox there, guys. Yeah. I don't know. Aren't you there to save the children, but you're the one having the children removed? Maybe you're the bad guys. Maybe it's not the government that's after you. Maybe you're shit at life.
Maybe they're the bad guys.
Yeah. Anyway, old Parliament House is going to need a good fucking hosing out just to remove the stench. Oh, God. don't poison people with brownies. Look, these fucking sob sets are not big showerers. A lot of them are just living vans. So, get the domestos out. The White King, it's all just bleach to me, and give the place a fucking hard scrubbing. It's probably going to cost another $5 million.
Give it a good scrub. Remove that salsit nonsense.
Yes, and don't trust the brownies. For the love of God, don't trust the brownies.
Don't come from the caterers, by the way. I want to make that absolutely clear.
Do not come from the caterers. Do not come from the caterers. Not even allegedly. No.
Not even allegedly.
No.
All right. Now, I did do a bit of complaining at the front of the show about all the fucking terrible shit I've had to watch and go through over these last couple of weeks.
It has changed you. It's changed his man. I don't like it.
It's made me angry.
It has.
Listeners, two fuck ugly social media phenomena have emerged in recent times, and it's time we had a look at them. The first is what we would call auditors. No, not accountants, but men. There's only men as far as I can tell. Who rove around with cameras filming police, corrective services officers, government employees, and some will go and stand outside retailers or restaurants and just film away.
Yeah.
Now, auditing, sometimes referred to in the US as constitutional auditing, like the pedo patrols, which we'll get to shortly, are not about exposing corruption or preventing child sexual abuse. They are about making cash for the content. And when we have money as the sole motivator, shit can get very, very weird very quickly.
Social media influencers are paid for their content, if their account is monetized, of course. And these guys, they do it for a reason. So YouTubers earn around 0.0818 per view. So that's like 1.8 cents per
almost
view.
2 cents a view.
Yeah, which, it matters when it adds up. The TikTok Creator Fund, that sounds very centralized and Stalinist, pays between 2 and 4 cents per 1,000 views. And Facebook pays around 1 cent per 1,000 views. Those two platforms get a lot of views, though, really in the millions constant because they're small reels. But look, either way, when the clicks are counted in the millions, serious amounts of money are handed over by social media platforms to these people, regardless of the nature of the content. Like I say, if they're monetized, but we caveat that later. I mean, alleged rapist Andrew Tate, who should not be monetized and is monetized, who is currently describing himself as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom while sitting in his bolt hole in Romania, routinely boasts he receives hundreds of thousands of dollars from X on a monthly basis. So probably about $20,000 a month because he's a lying sack of shit. But it should be zero.
Maybe I think it'd be a lot more than that. He did sort of flash up a check that he'd received from X for, my memory of it is $300,000. Now that was obviously for more than a month. But I don't think it was much longer than that.
That's fucked in the
because
head.
It was not long, before that he'd been readmitted to X.
Yes, monetized by the guy who does that shit. Yeah, that's really bad.
Rapist, allegedly.
We still have to say
and runs
that,
a criminal organisation. Not even going to say allegedly about that.
Nah, fuck it. The guy's admitted to everything. He's a rapist piece of shit. I don't mind saying that. Oh, God. Anyway, this is where we live in. So the more clicks and views, the more money they get. It's a formula. We all know it. But there's no ethical boundary set here, really, except for the obvious ones of posting child pornography or images of sexual violence. And even if they do get into issues with YouTube, might have some sort of content moderation thing, other platforms. They've got other platforms like Rumble or Kick and things like that where they can do the same thing and get donations and clicks there. So
true enough, except to say you want to be on TikTok, you want to be on
that's where the volume is.
Because that's the major platform. That's where you're going to get the most likes.
Even if you make your name on
views.
YouTube and then you go somewhere else because you get kicked off and demonetized, you still can't maintain those numbers because people just don't go to you anymore.
So you've got to go for the Zuckerbergs, the Musks, and
definitely
the Sergis, I suppose.
And you couch your content in things where you don't swear, you don't copyright violate, and you follow all those rules, and you become a little content lawyer while still making abrasive content that is bad for society that shouldn't fucking exist.
That's the big issue. So constitutional audits are cheered on by right-wing freedom lovers and assorted idiots who think the very act of turning up and filming government employees will somehow magically expose corruption.
Mm-hmm.
As a journalist, and I guess this is self-evident, exposing corruption is not quite so easy. You have to be sources, possibly whistleblowers provide evidence, there's documentation, and further inquiries are made before the journalist gets to the point of sticking a camera under someone's nose to ask some hard questions. But that's a lot of hard work, and these auditors don't like hard work.
No one does.
But they consider themselves journalists without the slightest understanding of what journalism is actually about.
Oh, not even fucking remotely. I mean, like the auditor with the biggest social media following is known as Long Island Audit. His real name is Sean Paul Reyes. Now, Reyes has
I think it's Reyes, yes.
Reyes? Yeah, okay. Because, Reyes, I've seen people say Reyes, but I'll go Reyes. Why not? He has over 3 million followers across various platforms, and like all auditors, his business model is based on inciting anger among police or government officials, and where he might get arrested, he'll just sue and make
It's
money
the
from
business
it.
model.
It's a business model. It's a fucking business model.
Aggravate people, police particularly to the point where, or aggravate people to the point where they will seek to have you removed by trespass.
They'll react
And
somehow.
then the police will get involved and then he sues.
And it's those reactions to get views as well. So it's a whole fucking business model. He's also a felon. He was convicted 10 years ago for attempted burglary and jailed. During his jail stint, he was assaulted by another inmate, and he went on to sue the state of New York, this time unsuccessfully. Oh, that's very sad. He was supposed to inform prison staff he was at risk, but failed to do so, and thus no negligence on part of the state.
Yeah, no negligence found. But, this is a guy who's really, really bitter. He might have every good reason to be bitter, given the fact that he got a touch up in prison. There's some talk, but it's probably just social media gossip that he might have been on the inside with the screws, giving a bit of information away against his fellow inmates.
That's not how you make friends.
That may not be true. But yes, he spent some time in jail. He got a nice old touch up while he was there, tried to sue the state of New York. And failed, and then became, a man of just this, sort of almost trembling grievance.
Yeah, okay. That'll
Now, he lists his occupation on LinkedIn as investigative journalist. Ha ha.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Now,
okay.
I believe that cops on active duty should always believe they're being filmed. I think that's something, whether it's Australia, United States, whatever it is, you should, when you're out on active duty, you should imagine that you are being filmed anyway.
Yep.
And of course, police these days are, for the most part, wearing body cams.
Yeah, of course, yep.
But filming in hospitals, I mean, Reyes does this. He's not the only one, but he films in hospitals.
Yeah, it's
he's
shit
not
behavior.
wandering into wards, but if you are in a ward and you're a patient there and you see a guy walking past just filming wherever he can, you're going to get really aggravated.
It's a very sensitive
very
place.
angry.
Oh, and outside of businesses, just anywhere.
Yeah,
people
we'll
just trying to get on with their fucking
get
lives.
to a bit more of that soon. But
just so
auditors
frustrating.
like Sean Paul Reyes, that's what they want. They want the confrontation.
They do. They want the confrontation. It's exactly what they want. So, unfortunately, this sucks. In the US, somehow this has managed to work out. First Amendment rights mean that a person who reports to be a journalist can go almost anywhere in government buildings, and attempts to stop them and sometimes arrest them, of course, will fail and lead to legal action from the auditor, and they will almost certainly win their case. So the civil suit that follows makes them rich.
So we have a situation where a personal person, sometimes they're at sue, so there'll be someone holding the camera while the other one does the stick. They refuse to identify themselves. They are often masked. And when people sue them, they are likely to feel unsafe or intimidated. When they're asked, who are you? What's your name? They'll never answer. So it's really quite confronting.
Yeah.
I mean, not just for law enforcement, for anyone, a government employee or anyone just wandering or just sitting down having a meal inside a restaurant. And there's a couple of characters who look like crims and generally are.
Yes.
Just filming for no reason. And they're masked and they look ugly and angry. And you think, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, leave me alone. And they won't leave you alone.
But all these auditors want is confirmation for clicks or for a really golden day, get arrested, then sue and rake in the big bucks. Because what we never see is the edited footage. Or
unedited
the footage that didn't make it into the YouTube stuff.
Yeah.
Which would be sometimes someone just coming up and giving him a nice old bake and really, sort of basically unsettling them. But you never get to see this. They always look to be in control. Oh, no, I can't give you my name. I'm a journalist. I have First Amendment rights, power of the press, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
They do sound a bit like subsits with cameras. And there is a link, at least according to one retired cop in the US, who has led the charge in training police for how to deal with subsits. We've talked about this fellow before, Joel.
All right. And this is a quote. "I'm definitely concerned," said Bob Powdett. Ported, fucking Americans. The former police chief of West Memphis, Arkansas, told the Kansas City Star his son and another officer were gunned down by sovereign citizens during a 2010 traffic stop, according to the report. Fuck that. Quote, "These are the same tactics sovereign citizens use. The language they use, going into city office buildings, refusing to give their names, but demanding you give yours, videotaping everybody."
Yeah, look, we mentioned Paedo before because Paedo, after his son and another officer were gunned down, it was a father and son.
Oh, was that
Solsic
incident?
Yeah.
With the AK-47s or whatever it was.
The son and the father follow the two police just shooting them around the car.
Yeah.
And
that's
it was just a
fucking messed up.
routine traffic stop. And what Bob Paedo has done in his grief is basically led the training around the United States on how to deal with sausage.
Okay. Yeah, that's
how
good.
to de-escalate, how to not take any shit from them, all this sort of stuff. So
okay, cool.
That's a really significant figure. And
stand-up guy.
And for him to draw the parallel between constitutional auditors and soft sets is really interesting, I think. Now, I know we have a lot of law enforcement listeners, and we're delighted to have them. So just imagine what it would feel like to have someone filming the car park you park your car in, license plate and all, while you're getting out of your car about to start your shift. Yeah. I mean, this is something that Reyes does and others do all the time. And it's seriously intimidating, but the First Amendment says it's okie dokie.
Yeah, well, in Australia, there is absolutely no fucking way this shit would be able to happen. There's none of this First Amendment nonsense. And just looking at some of these ugly constitutional orders, I personally plan for the good old days. You've told me all about them. Somewhere in the 1980s, imagine filming Roger Rogerson in his nice, clean, crisp polo shirt while he was up to some of his tricks, getting it all dirty with a bit of blood.
I'm an independent journalist, Mr. Rogerson.
I have the right. I've got the right to film this. Yes, these guys would quite rightly and quite quickly be introduced to that great Aussie invention, the shallow, unmarked grave.
The shallow grave, yeah, it's a beautiful Australian invention. It's like you go through all the trouble of murdering someone and you chuck them in the boot, you drive out into the scrub and you lump them out of the boot. It's all very physical. And then you go, I couldn't be fucked digging a hole. Just kick some leaves and shit.
Too much hassle.
That's why it's a great Aussie invention.
Isn't it?
Laziness personified. Look, it would be hard to have any sympathy for any auditors who went that way, Joel, who ended up with a few sticks and leaves covered over their dead bodies.
Yes.
One auditor known as Reno Audit has more posts and followers, so he's not a success, but he makes a nuisance of himself in Nevada libraries when they hold drag queen story time.
Oh, how creative.
No.
Just stop. Anyway, he claims to be a Vietnam veteran, and this may be true, I don't know, but it's impossible to know, really, because what have I got, like GI records? But he wraps himself in the Star-Spangled Banner and becomes quite upset when he sees the rainbow flag. So, yeah, cool.
Well, he won't be seeing too much of the rainbow flag in the next 4 years, let's be honest. Not in the States.
No, not in federal places. That's for absolutely sure. But, you know, everyone's cowering around him and going, don't worry, Mr. Trump, I don't like trans people either. Then he stumbles around libraries and government buildings. He's politely told he can't film where children are, which is completely
Fair.
cool and normal.
It's kind of reasonable, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of cool and normal. I don't see a drag queen doing this. Worse, after being politely refused entry to a children's event, he will then follow the person around. And when that government employee goes to buy lunch, the asshole will shout out that employee is failing to protect children from, and then make up some bullshit. And then ugly scenes often arise as a result because people think they're protecting kids.
So you've got people just standing at a lunch counter being yelled at and being told in front of a group of 30 or 40 people that they have failed to protect children. I mean, it's an ugly scene, right? And this guy was actually the guy that copped this, and this clown was filming it, earlier on had just been perfectly reasonable with this guy. And the guy was saying, well, what happens if people complain about the rainbow flag? He goes, we haven't had any.
Yeah, it doesn't really happen, though.
We didn't have any
You're the
complaints.
asshole here. Fuck off.
And he was just perfectly reasonable and polite. Next hour or so, this guy wanders off to get himself a sandwich for lunch, and he's being fucking hunted by this clown.
It's just despicable behavior. I have nothing but fucking just...
Another one who I won't even give you the name of, listeners, because he's such a prick, is a Dominican living in New York City. That's not really important, other than he's just so appalling. He sits outside restaurants, shops, etc., often sort of luxury shops, if that's the right word.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And films from the outside. So people, as I say, people are just sitting down dining, and you've got this fucking clown. So someone from the restaurant will come over and say, listen,
Right.
You're making our diners uncomfortable. We've had a lot of requests to have their tables moved away from your camera's gaze.
Yeah.
And he'll just go, nah. And he'd be so aggravating that there's almost certainly a sort of confrontation. And then he'll wait outside for, let's say, a waiter has come up to him or a maitre d'. He'll wait outside for the maitre d' to finish his shift and then confront him again. And it's always just like, you hit me. I want you to hit me. In fact, he actually says to him, I will give you money to hit me.
Oh, my God. What a fucking loser.
Then he can sue.
Yeah. That is so frustrating.
So you've never seen a bloke who needs to be given a good quilting more than this guy, right?
Yeah.
But you know that if you laid a hand on him, it'd probably cost you $50,000, $60,000, maybe more.
Isn't that the fucking worst? I just can't stand this shit. It's so frustrating.
Just awful.
Anyway, so look, that's the business model of the constitutional orders, you know? They are just waiting for their big payday to come when they're arrested for trespass by some cop who doesn't know what they're doing. And then they can use this First Amendment defense, which has been practiced a million times. And bingo, you know, it's money in the bank. Sean Paul Reyes, the Long Island auditor guy we were talking about before, he's had 2 successful claims against the state of New York and New Jersey for false arrest and totaling approximately $100,000. Fuck that. That is good bank. So add that to his millions of views on social media, and the guy makes quite a lot of money. Like, you know, for what it's worth, and these aren't always accurate, but his net worth is listed at $3 million, which is not bad for a convicted felon with a bit of a glass jaw. So, you know, you can't work at Wendy's, but you can work here.
Yeah. Look, I've perused a range of local and state government websites in the United States who have begun to issue guidelines. So it's been going around for a year or so now. They'll say, this is how we deal with these clowns. Yep. So the first step is to acknowledge they are allowed to film in common areas of public buildings, including car parks where police or corrective services officers park their cars, which is nuts to me, but anyway.
Nuts.
The second step is to they urge that government departments, police stations, hospitals, etc., increase the number of areas prohibited to public access.
Great.
Because once you put up that prohibited sign, they can't go in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's the net effect of constitutional auditors, to make more public spaces prohibited to the public.
Good.
Well done, guys.
Great.
Fucking top work.
Yeah. Sweet. Real freedom. Love it.
Now, Joel, you might be able to help me out with this, but I'm no expert. I'm no expert on constitutional law in the US. But the First and Fourth Amendments do provide a constitutionally protected right to privacy.
Yeah.
It's implied, but alas, not for government workers at work or in public areas. There are torts of privacy too in the US.
Yeah.
So what it fundamentally means is the First and Fourth Amendments would say in your own home that you are inviolate. You know, someone just can't come in and start filming you in your backyard.
Yeah, there's nuisance and stuff like that.
Right. So and you would be, you know, and using torts of privacy, you would be able to sue these characters.
There's more nuisance.
You could make the argument, and this is where I'm calling upon your legal knowledge. You could make the argument that if you're sitting down at a restaurant, you are happily going about your business and you have a right to privacy there too. I don't know how it would work.
I don't think there is a right to privacy, though.
But I hope someone with a few bob and some good legal advice can chase these pricks down.
Because I think there's harassment, there's nuisance, there's public nuisance, which is, you know, being a nuisance in public, basically. But these have elements, and the defense, of course, being that they are doing this in a journalistic sense, which is protected by their sort of First Amendment right.
Yeah.
That is really tricky. But is there actually a tort of privacy? I don't.
Yeah, no, throughout the United States, I looked into that.
Okay.
And it really just needs someone who's got a few bob, as I say, sitting there eating their meal and maybe engaged in a personal conversation with a partner or a fellow businessman or something like that, and notes this fucking clown show going on outside and says, fuck these guys, I'm going to sue them. But when you look at them, with the possible exception of Sean Paul Reyes, they look like absolute dead shits. So who can't wouldn't have two bob to rub together. So the ugly practice, as it is, will continue for the foreseeable.
Yeah.
It's an
I see what you
interesting
mean.
one. It's a really interesting one.
Yeah.
Clearly, if you're a government employee at work, and provided that you are not in a prohibited area, you can be filmed. And look, the other thing that the auditor I mentioned from Nevada, he goes into post offices and films people doing their normal business,
just posting
And
shit.
I'm reliably assured that he is doing nothing wrong there, and people get really upset with him. So maybe that's what we want. We just want someone to chin him.
Well,
and
but
hit
that
him
just
so
gets
hard he won't remember who hit him.
it gets him content he wants, and then he sues them. So
That's the business model. It's
That's the business
really
model.
fucking crazy.
it's very frustrating. Yeah, I mean, look, when it comes down to it, the huge distinction here is the idea that they've got this First Amendment right and we don't. So
Yeah.
I guess there is that thing of like, will this madness hit our shores in a similar way? And there is yes, with a caveat, because I mean, like, this still does exist, and we've had people like harassing pharmacies and shit. But like, there are quite a number of auditors and social media from the UK where there's no First Amendment protections, right? They've got implied freedoms of movement and association and communication. We have similar things, based in our constitution, blah, blah, blah. But they're all implied and it's all very vague. Most of the UK variety harass police in obnoxious fashion, which is just hooliganism with a fucking smartphone. And
Yeah.
I'm sure, generally speaking, not intelligent
you
people.
don't see it to the same extent where they wander into a hospital or wander into a public library.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy shit. And for them to be told to fuck off, I mean, yeah, it's a no-brainer. But like one film's encounters the police, right? Demanding badge numbers and names and blah, blah. When they reply, he says good boy or good girl, like he's talking to a Labrador or something. I mean, this is why cops hate them. They're antagonistic fuckheads.
Disrespectful.
It's intentionally disrespectful.
It's intentionally disrespectful. And it's on the basis that this is a person you've never met before. The person's wearing a uniform, doing a job, but you've got to be rude to them from the outset or humiliate them,
Yeah.
There's something quite sick about it.
So yeah, it's outside of the whole going and filming yourself, giving a cease and desist to a pharmacist and stuff thing. We are aware of 2 social media auditors in Australia who follow cops around and film and just generally become pests.
Yeah, it's just cops, yeah.
But they also don't have a lot of traction and not very high follower counts. So it's sort of it's sort of limited to the fringe and limited to the US where, quite frankly, this madness belongs, but it's also enabled by fucking legal precedent.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the ones that we have seen in Australia, that they'll, the cops will just sort of shrug their shoulders. Yeah, okay, what are you doing today? But it's just bizarre that the active filming police on active duty will somehow unearth, massive corruption.
It's meaningless. It's completely fucking meaningless.
It's just ridiculous.
It's so
nonsense. It is just a form of harassment.
It is.
But the one question I wanted to
yeah.
ask, or the issue I wanted to raise, is that people like Reyes and these other characters, they will say, I am an independent journalist. They'll often be asked about those things and say, well, who do you work for?
Yeah.
And I say, well,
I'm a citizen journalist.
For the obvious answer is from these auditors is I don't answer questions.
Mm-hmm.
And someone will ask them and say, well, are you published in newspapers or are you on television? I don't answer questions. That's a Reyes technique, and many of them do this.
Yeah.
I don't answer questions.
Sounds like it works.
They have a right. Once they call themselves an independent journalist, that's it. And certainly in the States, and you'd see it here too. I mean, Avi Yemeni.
Yeah, he does it. Monica Smith.
I'm just going to call myself a journalist.
Just going to say it.
So
Magic
how do
words.
we define? I mean, we know that the courts have actually looked at this in respect of Avi Yemeni and others. Are you a journalist? I mean, Monica too.
Yeah.
Monica Smith had that thing. And it's one of those things the judiciary don't want to touch. And I can understand it because journalism is such a sort of indefinable sort of action. You can just be a journalist in the traditional sense is a chronicler of what they see. So at that level, Avi Yemeni is a journalist. At that level, Sean Paul Reyes is a journalist. Even that dead shit in Nevada is it could be considered a journalist. Monica Smith too, for that matter.
Monica Smith and Avi Yemeni write articles and they publish them. They also don't seek comment from the
that's
people
true.
they talk about.
Yemeni's got a body of work, and, and Monica probably less so, but they could at least say, well, this is who I work for and this is what I do.
Yeah.
But
Minus
these guys,
the
there's
ethics.
nothing there, and there's just a series of YouTube videos of them filming people on the streets.
Yeah, pretty much. And hoping something happens inflammatory that will give them clicks and make them a viral clip.
Indeed.
Yeah. Oh, God. Anyway, so look, we now should just turn over this chapter because that was frustrating and shit and make it even worse by going to an even uglier side of social media. What we'll just sort of generically call pedo patrols, right?
Pedo patrols or pedo hunters.
Pedo hunters.
Just sort of so many names, but yeah.
Self-proclaimed usually. These YouTubers make a living out of basically entrapping men who to more or less meet boys and girls over the internet, confronting them at the meet spot and subjecting the men not just to exposure on social media, but to acts of humiliation and sometimes even, well, quite often, violent assault.
Yeah, really nasty. This is the stuff that really shook me up. Look, this podcast is no friend of pedophiles, and I put my child protection credentials up against anyone outside of law enforcement.
Uh-huh.
But what is troubling in many instances is that the methods used to lure these men to meets is almost always opaque. You just don't know the backstory, right?
You have no idea.
Only a few sites publish chat logs, and even those who do provide edited versions.
Uh-huh.
Now, everyone hates pedophiles, and this is the problem, right? And so these men receive no sympathy, even when they are filmed being violently assaulted. I watched one, I thought I'd had enough of this, but I actually saw one the other day where one poor guy would have been in his mid-20s, not a big guy at all. He got king hit maybe 3 times, and every time he'd pick himself up and he'd sort of try and run away, and then the king hit him again.
Yep. That's
and
what
there's
they chase them
no
and beat them up.
way that could not be subject to criminal charges, but no one he's not going to press charges.
You're not going to
no one else is going to press charges.
No one's
so
going
in
to
a sense, they're kind of fair game to be beaten publicly. You know.
Yeah.
Look, we can trace the allure of this sort of phenomenon in social media back to a TV show, Joel.
Yes, I used to watch this myself from
me too.
2004.
No, I saw a couple of episodes, yeah.
I used to watch it on online, yeah. So from November 2004 to December 2007, America was enthralled by a particularly sinister reality TV phenomenon, To Catch a Predator. South Park has lampooned it, you know.
Yeah, they did too, yeah.
Come take a seat. Come take a seat. By pretending to be kids aged 12 to 15, the hidden camera show aimed to catch predators luring children online and entice them to houses under the pretense of getting laid, having some sex. Then, before the predator was able to attack, series host Chris Hance would appear from another room, just surrounded by cameras. Doesn't need to be. There's like 20 of them with like these boom mics and shit, just to really make them know they're being filmed.
CCTV was significant, or having really small cameras in
there was tons of CCTV. So, they didn't need to do that, but it had the dramatic effect because they knew
and
they
then
knew they were in shit.
Camera crews would just burst through the door
and
as well,
just big floodlights and shit, and basically say, take a seat. They'd start reading printouts of the graphic messages a predator had sent to who they thought was a child. They're not good. And then let them leave the house thinking, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad, I suppose, to a barrage of police officers waiting outside to arrest them immediately.
Can I have some of that pizza?
Yeah. Oh, look.
I've got to go now.
Is she still in the hot
then they're
tub?
arrested,
Because,
right? So,
I mean,
so this was done in cahoots with the cops.
Yeah, this was done with police, with a vigilante group. They call themselves Perverted Justice. And basically, this, they would have followed the rules of evidence. They would have done all the things to make sure that this was done as proper as possible while maintaining the dramatic effect that kept the film going. But the show did screen in Australia and in most parts of the world in one way or another, through syndication. And
I was talking, and we'll get to one of our police contacts soon. But excuse me, he told me that he had watched as a young fellow before he became a police officer, a British show, which I'm just not aware of. I just hadn't seen it, but obviously he had seen it in Australia, so it did screen here. Okay. Similar concept to Catch a Predator.
Yeah, okay, interesting. So there were 3 series made and screened in the US and abroad, but the show ended there amid some legal discussion about entrapment, which it almost certainly was, and is a bit of a no-no in most states in the US. And the show's morality was further questioned when one of the trapped men committed suicide. So in 2006, a local assistant DA in Dallas-Fort Worth, Bill Conrad, committed suicide. He was not confronted by the show, but he had been engaged in chat with a volunteer for the group known as Preferred Justice, which is linked to the program, as we said. But police were called to Conrad's home. A SWAT team breached the home, and Conrad gave up and shot himself dead. The entire sting operation was heavily criticized. 23 other men were enticed into the sting house overall, but no charges were proceeded due to the multiple failures on the part of Preferred Justice. Failing to provide the chat log, the group claimed implicated the 23 men, and Conrad. Warrants were issued for arrests for times, places, and subjects. They got them wrong. And it was said the NBC network used police as some sort of private army for its show. I didn't know any of that. I thought that they had this done properly. They didn't get convictions
on this occasion. This was so this is a massive enterprise. So we can see they've actually decided, well, we'll sting 24 guys.
Oh, is this night. This is like a 1 episode thing.
One episode, and we'll do 24. Well, whether they're going to turn it into multiple episodes or not, I don't know.
Yeah,
but they were going to confront 24 men, including a local assistant DA, Bill Conrad.
Yeah, okay.
Now he didn't go to the sting house, but others did, and they were and NBC or the producers. Well, the NBC network, what were the producers of this show, would only call the police in at their discretion, not the police's discretion, at their discretion.
Wow, that's so messed up.
And so, they spent the next year or so saying, look, we did nothing wrong. That's the network. We did nothing wrong. And this fellow, he shot himself. Well, they obviously had, he was ashamed of himself, and that's why he did what he did. Well, a SWAT team out the front. But as you can see, Joel, NBC had to settle a wrongful death suit against the local assistant DA, Bill Conrad. His sister bought the action for an undisclosed amount, but read millions, right?
Yeah, that's just like kind of
outrageous negligence.
Yeah, wow, that's quite intense shit. So the show was cancelled in the end. This was amid heat over potential violations of entrapment laws and just general moral criticism after one of the targets committed suicide.
Well, that was Conrad.
The mess.
That was Conrad. So that's why the show shut down. It wasn't because it wasn't a rating success. It was a huge success.
Yes.
But there were creeping moral and ethical concerns about this and legal ones around entrapment. And so the show died. And that was almost 2 decades ago. And now we have a completely different ethical framework around social media.
Arguably worse.
The show rated its socks off. But despite the things that could go wrong very quickly in setting up what are criminal investigations established as television entertainment, it just all went horribly wrong.
Yeah, and who could have seen that coming, right?
Yeah, and that was before the mighty grip of social media entered our lives. So the gap would be filled by YouTubers, online pranksters, and others who think they can make a quid with no ethical concerns.
That last bit is the most important part. No ethical concerns.
No.
At least the NBC guys were trying not to be psychopaths.
Well, they were getting the best legal advice they could buy, or they could purchase.
Exactly. They weren't just a bunch of yokels slapping a guy around in a car park that Jimmy said was talking to a 14-year-old, and we don't really know what Jimmy did to bring the guy to the car park, do we?
Show us your chat logs. Show us the level of entrapment. So if you're sitting in a chat room, well, you go on, Joel.
Well, no, it's fair, but we don't know what the process was and what they said and what they promised and all that sort of stuff. But
who initiated contact? That's the first thing. So in a chat room situation, whether it's gone Kick or one of those awful fucking platforms.
They often say that when they say they're 14, the older person sends photos of their dick, and that to me is like a red line. But we don't know. We just don't know.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that sort of thing in a minute. But
yeah. So basically,
whoever initiates the conversation, and we'll get to how the police actually do these things, what they call decoy investigations or decoy actions. But who initiates the conversation? That's critical, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got some of these YouTube clowns sitting on Kick or in chat rooms, and chat rooms kind of almost dead now, aren't they?
They really are.
Who makes the approach?
Yep.
So if it's the lurer, if it's the YouTuber who's initiated the contact, that immediately raises issues around entrapment.
Mm-hmm.
That don't arise because these guys are just going to get confronted and bashed anyway, or humiliated in some form.
Yeah,
Go on, Joe.
I'll tell you. So, look, the YouTubers creating these videos do come out badly regardless of the legitimacy of the videos, because if the videos are indeed entirely staged, then we have a problem of YouTubers lying to their audiences, which happens all the time now, while simultaneously self-aggrandizing their own action. You know? They're sort of painting themselves as white knights, when in reality, they're just paying actors to make them look like heroes. And like I say, that's not rare now, especially on TikTok. Lots of those videos you see, those viral videos, are staged, completely fucking staged.
I hate staged videos. I mean, just think, why are you doing this?
It's so pointless, but it works. They get millions of views. It
look,
works.
without wanting to interrupt too much, a lot of this stuff, and we'll get to that in a minute, is prank. It has evolved from the sort of pedo controls have evolved from online pranks or social media pranksters.
Fucking kids.
Now there was a guy. This was just before Christmas, who filmed himself on TikTok spraying bug spray on fruit and vegetables in a supermarket.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
And
he got in a lot of shit.
Oh man, he's been charged. He'll do 10 years.
That's wild.
And he's been charged with poisoning. Been charged with mass poisoning. Now you would have to sort of determine just how many people, if any, got ill, and I'm sure some did.
I think he got caught and he went like a big mea culpa and I'm sorry, and then the cops got involved. And
yeah. Well, we'll just put these handcuffs on you, and then you can come and tell us everything.
Yeah, that's it.
Fucking
just
idiot.
like Ralphie Babbitt would.
But some of these pranks that they get up to, I've seen guys walk into, let's say, Crips type gang areas wearing, I think the Bloods are red and the Crips are blue. So they'll be wearing red.
Yeah.
And then they'll just go up and just annoy someone, and you see guns get pulled,
Yeah. That's
and
insane.
They'll go, hey, it's all a prank, man, it's all a prank. Yeah, fuck yeah, you've just got a fucking extra hole in you now.
Yeah. And like some of them do get shot. I mean, like, that does happen.
Get shot. I've seen a few get shot, actually.
Yeah. But I mean, like, the thing here, right, is that if this whole thing is in fact real and it's not just staged, these YouTubers are literally letting child predators head off after almost committing a violent crime, managing to find both a child predator and equally let him get away with any legal consequences.
This often happens. Yeah.
What do you do? Like, you get this person and you say, okay, here is how you avoid being captured by law enforcement next time.
Yeah, and it puts YouTube as the platform in murky legal water. I mean,
it fucking should.
Whether or not these videos are faked, YouTubers are viewing themselves as enforcers of justice, qualified and knowledgeable enough to deal with serious violent crime.
It's fucking incitement.
It's an issue that's difficult to police, and whether or not they're faked, these videos are lucrative. Again, pulling in huge viewing numbers and brand sponsorships. So beyond moral reasons, there is very little incentive for YouTube to regulate or even ban this type of content. They love it.
Yeah. And like you get these like gambling websites and stuff like that sponsor these things, like Steak or something. It's all over this trash content. I thought Steak
much like their predecessors, the luxury pranks videos have been roundly ridiculed by other YouTubers, inspiring hundreds of reaction videos, mocking the stilted nature of the seemingly staged stings. However, the popularity of these videos, in spite of the mockery, is where they are different to the social experiment videos that came before them, enough that they may be plaguing YouTube for months, if not years to come.
Ugh.
So what could possibly go wrong, Joel? Let me be even clearer. What could possibly go wrong in the United States where almost every fucker has a gun?
I think we all know what's coming.
This from US network NBC.
A Michigan man who used social media to try to catch pedophiles was fatally shot during his dispute with a person he accused of being a predator over the weekend, police say. Robert Wayne Lee, 40, boasted a combined following of over 60,000 on Instagram and Facebook, where he was known as Bupak Shakur.
Bupak Shakur. He went the same way as Tupac.
He did. He would pose as a 15-year-old girl to lure potential predators and get them arrested, a tactic officials considered dangerous, the Oakland County Sheriff's Office said. Sheriff Michael Bouchard. I can't pronounce
Bouchard.
anyone's name.
I would think it should be Bouchard. If it's French, but it's probably Butchered.
Michel Bouchard said in a statement that Lee had a one-man crusade that led to the arrest and criminal charges being filed against several men. However, he has also mistakenly identified someone as a sexual predator who was not. Whoops. That's a boo-pack whoopsie. It's not good. Don't do that. Quote, while we certainly understand his desire to hold child predators accountable, many times well-intentioned individuals who engaged in this don't know the standard of evidence required for convictions and often underestimate the potential for violence confronting a suspected predator. Bouchard was right. He did underestimate the potential for violence confronting a suspected predator.
Yeah, let's have a look at the case.
He was shot dead.
Yeah.
He also said that suspected predators at time, quote, feel trapped and often lash out violently. I mean, they got nothing to lose if they're going to be broadcast as pedophile. So another quote from him, when we have arrested predators in such circumstances, they have rammed police cars and exhibited other violent behavior in attempts to escape. Duh.
I'm not buying that, by the way. And you know, but just before we move on, the two men who were accosted by Boupak Shakur, including the shooter, were later released without charge. The shooter was 17.
Whoa!
And the person that the person that Boupak Shakur confronted and called a pedophile was 18 years of age. 18-year-old pedophiles?
Yeah, it doesn't really work. Yeah, that's very Romeo and Juliet.
Well, it gets to that whole business of entrapment. And this guy clearly, for likes and follows, was just going out of his way, including approaching an 18-year-old guy and pretending to be a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
I just want to look at the comments made by this copper, Bouchard. Predators, he said, will feel trapped and often lash out violently. It's not the way. I mean, I don't believe that's true. And certainly my conversations with law enforcement tell me that that's not the case.
Well, Boupak Shakur found out differently.
And I think police are walking, certainly in the United States and possibly in the UK too, are walking, both sides of the fence, if you like.
Yeah, okay.
Because everyone hates pedophiles. So you never want, as a copper, come out and say, okay, what this guy did was over the top and just unacceptable and we wish they would stop. In fact, New South Wales police have said pretty much just that fairly recently. But in the United States, it's like, well, pedophiles are fair game. You probably, this guy's made a few mistakes, but on the other hand, he has done some very good work. And so I just find that really just an appalling statement that this bloke's made after this clown's been shot dead.
Yeah, I feel you. But at the same time, like we said before, you do this enough times in a country full of guns and someone's just going to shoot you and run away.
Yeah.
That's just to me, that's a no-brainer. But if you look at these videos, and for the most part, of course, they are edited. They only select certain ones to go up to YouTube. They don't pay blah, blah, blah. But these people are meek. And they are scared and they are cowering.
Yeah, most of them are. But if you were watching one of these videos and you were of that pedophile bent, you might say, yeah, I'll go and meet this 12-year-old, but I'll take a gun.
Yeah. No, that's a reasonable insurance policy if you're and if you're a pedophile.
There are a number, numerous cases of violent episodes which never made it to social media, and some of them are in Australia. Some of them did, some of them didn't.
Yeah, this is very true. Okay,
so let us rip, Joel. This is a terrible case, by the way.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So in 2023, Albert Thorne, 57, from East Gippsland, was found guilty of murdering Lakes entrance man Bradley Lyons in December 2018. This is it's hectic.
Just terrible.
Mr. Lyons, 30 years old, he was beaten by a group of men and taken from his home before being shot in remote bushland. And that is the understatement of the century. It was bad. A Supreme Court jury in Melbourne heard Mr. Lyons was targeted by a vigilante group who believed he was a pedophile. And in all, 7 people were convicted over Mr. Lyons' death. It's a big operation. So until now, the full details of Stefani and Hoper's involvement, which are 2 of the people who were convicted, they've been suppressed. But in the Melbourne Supreme Court, Justice Andrew Tinney, said their actions culminated in Mr. Lyons being brutally murdered.
I mean, brutally murdered is an understatement.
It's such an understatement. He was tortured.
There is no
Severely
evidence
tortured.
that Mr. Lyons was a pedophile. Not that it matters, because no one deserves to die that way.
No, it was like
no
days
one,
of torture.
No one deserves to have their life taken by another human being, but to die in that appalling way.
Oh,
and
so
I
bad.
believe also that that his partner, who might be Hooper, was involved. You know,
Yes.
just
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah,
Anyway,
which is gross.
Look, this is vigilante justice without social media attention this time. Thorne, who was sentenced to more than 20 years in jail, proudly sported a back tattoo which read "Australian Freedom Fighters," replete with a Southern Cross flag. Hello, freedom boys, freedom fuck-ups. Another member who was involved in the abduction, torture and murder of Lyon, Nick Stefani, has recently sought to have his 10-year sentence reduced because Lyon was a pedophile. I mean, he got what was coming to him. Just a terrible, terrible case. But this one wasn't a case of, catch a predator type exercise on social media. But this one was. In 2016, another self-proclaimed Australian pedo hunter who was active on social media, filming himself making citizens' arrests, made a bit of a name for himself. Yahoo reports, Joel.
Yes, this is a while ago. A self-declared pedophile hunter has released video of himself marching a man to a New South Wales police station after a vigilante arrest. Cameron East is the man who called himself the Coffs Coast Pedo Hunter, has been making a name for himself in recent months by ensnaring alleged child groomers in public traps and posting videos of his operations to YouTube. There you go. So in the latest video, he accuses the man of trying to meet a teenage girl at Taree. The pedo hunter claims the man sent him lewd pictures and requested the same in return, thinking he was speaking to a child. Police were unimpressed.
Well, I just got to say, just before you go on with the comments from New South Wales Police, this is completely different to what we just heard from the cops in the United States. But go on, Joel.
It is. You're right. That is a very good thing to preface this with. We just do things differently here as well. Quote, unfortunately, the actions of this person, however well-meaning, does not assist New South Wales Police in our causes. Our detectives in this state, and in particular in this command, that's a big part, are highly trained and capable of understanding the laws and rules around evidence, how to obtain that evidence so that it is admissible in a court of law.
Hello.
Our focus in this command is in relation to suspected pedophiles, is about catching them and putting them before the courts.
Correct.
This type of vigilante behavior ignores those rules of evidence, so it puts at strong risk the capability of us to obtain a prosecution or conviction in the future.
Oh, round of applause for this police spokeswoman.
Yeah, it is. It's there's some very well selected language in here, which I really appreciate. It goes on to say, I have concerns over mistaken identities, people using other people's social media accounts, identity theft and fraud, cloned accounts. All these could mean an innocent person is publicly humiliated. And yeah.
Well said. Okay, round of applause says. But then the YouTube pedo hunter, what's his name, Cameron East, has disappeared, Joe. And he hasn't resurfaced. And I doubt police are expecting Mr. East to turn up suddenly out of the blue and say, surprise, everybody. Or that he's sitting on a banana land sipping a cocktail on an island somewhere. He is formally a missing person, and we won't go any further than that, other than to suggest that his activities probably have led to significant harm coming his
quite
way.
Possibly. Oh, he didn't seem like a very intelligent man.
Yeah, well, he was a convicted felon himself, convicted criminal himself.
Of course he was.
And it highlights the dangers of this shitty way he had of making a name for himself.
Yeah.
But dangers are also faced by the men they lure. I've seen videos of pedo hunters forcing one of the men they trapped to eat dog shit.
Jesus.
It was fucking hideous. And I looked at it afterwards looked at it about 3 or 4 times, traumatizing myself each time. Just thinking, is this mocked up? Is this mocked up? And I just had to think, unless I'm really gullible, no, this is real.
Yeah.
Anyway, one I saw only 2 days ago shows a young man, that's the one I mentioned, just getting king hit time after time. You know?
Yeah,
and
tries
he's
to get
badly
away,
concussed and staggering away. And that sort of stuff happens often. The other frequent event is that those who are lured or entrapped, we don't know, are men suffering serious intellectual disabilities. You do see this a lot in the UK and the US stuff. Where you'll see the guy who turns up without wanting to be particularly cruel, is not going to have a lot of luck with the ladies, shall we say.
No, they're incel types.
So the fact that someone has reached out to him who may be pretending to be a 14 or 15-year-old girl or boy and expresses some interest in that person, however fake that is going to lure that person in. That person may not be a pedophile, probably isn't.
It's possible.
But here's someone who says, here's someone who's interested in me. It's really fucking cruel. And you do see a lot of it.
Yeah.
And in the UK, one group known as Dark Justice filmed their confrontations. So 3 years ago, if you go back, scroll through all their lists of YouTube clips, they would never involve police. And the approach was to have the man or the person they trapped, or they call them traps, was say, all right, you say this or do this, and they get them to do star jumps or push-ups, and then they get up and they look in the camera and repeat after me, and they'll often be holding a sign that says the same thing. So, I am a filthy pedophile. Say that and we'll let you go.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get let go. But then when you look at their more recent videos on YouTube, the UK police, the plod, they're just around the corner. And they say, oh, we're going to hand you over to the police now, and then they arrest them.
To catch a predator.
So they've actually moved on from doing this thing as a stunt to now having this kind of, now we work closely with police.
Like legitimacy.
It's yes, a legitimacy indeed. So it really is kind of foul, man. I was staggered that they had the assistance of police.
Yeah.
Look, this is people say, at least we're getting peds off the streets. Some might think, that's what it is. But this is this awful phenomena doing that. Not according to an article in The Conversation published all the way back in 2015, Joel.
Yeah, so it's been happening for a while. The Vigilantes justify their actions by exposing offenders and passing the information they collect onto police. They also cite the fact that their actions have been pivotal in convicting a number of offenders that would otherwise not have been brought to justice. But the admissibility of the evidence obtained by these groups in a court of law can be questionable. It often lacks the necessary continuity and conclusive proof of wrongdoing required to secure a successful conviction. Of course, this fact further frustrates the Vigilantes and justifies their approach in their own minds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So where the pedo hunters justify their behaviour and refer the men they lure to police, it is often without any evidentiary basis.
Right.
And confessions, obviously made under coercion, either on film or otherwise, are not admissible as evidence.
Yeah.
You can't sort of just beat someone across the head and say, now confess.
Yeah.
And expect that to be accepted in a courtroom.
Yeah, and various chat logs and stuff like that, they require some degree of sanitization. They can't just be...
a wonderful New South Wales police spokeswoman said, there's a whole lot of rules of evidence that these people simply aren't aware of and
they do this very carefully.
And further, there is evidence that some of these groups here in the UK and in the US hold extremist right-wing beliefs. When I was in London, I had lunch with this lovely fellow and a good friend. The three of us were there, and this lovely fellow who's Northern Irish, but he's a KC and he's a criminal barrister, criminal defence barrister. And almost out of the blue, he just blurted out, he said, all these pedo hunter stuff. He said, they're all fucking right-wing lunatics.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's an article of faith on this podcast that cookers, soft-sits, freedom fucktards are always screaming about pedophiles.
Yes, they do.
It's also a fact that extreme right-wing beliefs lead to pedophilia. Look at the comments made by neo-Nazi shitheel Joel Davis in the Tizer just a few days ago. Joel.
Yep, saw this. And National Socialist Network figure Joel Davis believes 14-year-old girls should be allowed to marry adult men with their father's consent. Quote, ultimately, it should be up to the parents to decide whether their child is ready for marriage, he said on a nationalist podcast show. Quote, continuing, I don't give a shit about the laws of this country. According to canon law, a woman can marry at 14 and a man can marry at 16. To me, that's reasonable. And I think this was actually uncovered by Alternate Media Watch on Twitter.
Was it? Yeah,
sometime before this.
Someone was listening in, and they obviously gave or recorded the pod and sent it to the Adelaide Advertiser, Joel.
Yeah, we've mentioned this before as well, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well done them. Well done them, and well done Alternative Media Watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pedo Nazis. I mean, Jesus Christ, that's really the lowest of the low, isn't it?
It's not great. It's not great.
And that is a social media persecution I can get behind, Joel. Yeah. I mean, I can be all over that. Just hooking a couple of them and make them confess to be Nazis while they eat some dog shit.
He's not a good-looking guy too, so he's probably desperate.
He's not a good. You look at him and you go, "Master Race, be fucked, champ."
I know, right? Like maybe he's got a really good personality under all that.
You
Nazi.
are a fucking genetic throwback, pal.
Yeah, it really is.
Good old Joel. Anyway, regardless, the pedo hunter shite that ends up being published on social media is heavily edited. We don't know what methods were used to lure the men to meetings in the first place and whether that constitutes harassment. We don't know, and no one cares. This is the thing, because no one gives a fuck about pedophiles.
Victimless crime, man. Victimless crime.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, so in search of answers, we turn to one of our listeners who is in law enforcement, and I might add at the pointy end of it, which I don't have the stomach for. We're going to call him Jeff. Wake up, Jeff.
So we have to call him Jeff because we're not allowed to name him, not because he's insisted on anonymity, but because of the job he does requires him to be anonymous. So we won't go into that too much. Don't want to give too much away. Years ago, Jeff told us that he was involved in luring pedos to meets as part of genuine police investigations.
Yep.
He was a 12-year-old girl online for 4 years.
4 years. Oh my God.
Yes, there were plenty of takers.
Uh-huh.
And when arrests did take place, it's nothing like you see on these social media things.
Of course.
He told me that he and his fellow officers would arrive at the arranged place where the meeting was supposed to take place between the pedo and the 12-year-old girl, or the predator, we might call him, and the 12-year-old girl. And they'd just wait for 5 minutes, and the guy'd sort of just be looking around wondering if the person was going to turn up. And then they'd just walk in, and he said the arrests always occurred without incident.
Yeah.
So this big confrontation thing that we see on social media is just like, we're from the police and you're under arrest, and they go, oh well, fuck.
Oh, well,
sometimes
it's
they're
always
going
going to
to
happen at some point.
try and flee or fight their way out of it.
Yeah.
Was it entrapment? I don't believe so. But Jeff did say when he was online acting as a 12-year-old girl, men would circle around him in these sort of chat rooms. He'd use various things. It's some years ago, so it may, in fact, sort of appeared on Facebook, other platforms as well, chat rooms too. And when he turned up as a presence with basically a name, right, a female name, in this, let's in a chat room environment, men would circle around him.
Yeah.
Some would commit offences almost immediately, and that's what you were talking about before, Joel, sending a picture of their penis.
Yeah. Don't do that.
So that's an offence, right? Criminal offence right there, and they can be done right there and then. Others might take weeks or months, which I was really fascinated about, before they signalled their foul intentions, right?
Yeah.
But Jeff always knew he had one on the hook. When in chat rooms, the first question he was asked was, do you masturbate?
Don't ask a 12-year-old girl that.
Don't ask a 12-year-old girl that. Now, that might be an offence, but certainly it is an indication that this person is likely to commit more serious offences, shall we say.
Absolutely. Like, I'm not going to go further.
And here's the other thing. Most of the people he arrested had no criminal antecedents, no criminal history. Now, Jeff also mentioned, slightly different topic, but it mentioned arresting men in possession of CSAM, which is child sexual exploitation material, and how these men would be arrested often in front of their families for crimes that would effectively turn their lives, all their lives, their wives, children, upside down.
Yeah.
And no criminal histories, nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, what Jeff and I discussed is that a friend of mine who worked in the AFP, he was part of arrests where they'd just go and, they'd go and serve the resident, the perpetrator, with search warrants, and they'd come in place, they'd knock on the door would open, and it was almost like the guy would say, I've been expecting it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was always this sense that they'd done this, and Jeff said there were these guys more often than not were bored men playing around on the internet, started watching porn, and then crossed the line into child pornography. I mean, they are fucking idiots. Don't get me wrong, using horrible exploitative material, and but they destroy their lives, and they do. Like I say, it's almost this inexorable walk towards that cliff.
Yeah.
And look, I just wanted to mention one arrest that he told me about. I just found so poignant, and he said they were always sort of considerate about when they would make an arrest. They weren't in the business of creating chaos and mayhem in that particular family home.
Yeah.
But he spoke of one arrest where they turned up about 6 o'clock, 6 in the evening, and the car was about to pull out of the driveway. Husband, wife, 2 children, and it's not an automatic arrest. You see, so they've got to serve the search warrants first.
Yeah,
and search obviously devices, search the home, but search devices fundamentally. And so that's what they had to do with this guy who was sitting in his car with his wife and his 2 children about to go out for dinner at a local restaurant.
Fuck.
And when they'd finished with serving him with the search warrants and so forth, the guy went back to the home, back to, just walk down the front yard and try to get in. The wife had just shut, closed the door on him. And that was the end of that marriage. That's the end of essentially his life.
Oh, totally.
As it stood,
Oh, completely.
And Jeff would say these guys, more often than not, are fucking bored guys. This particular fellow, I was told, he would tell his wife that he was an amateur military historian. That's why he was up at night to all hours on the internet.
Wow. That is a fucking
hell. What a shock
excuse.
That's going to be. And everyone's going to, I don't know how the kids handle that. I know there are support networks for women and children family members whose husbands or partners have been convicted of either child sex offending or possessing CSAN.
Whether it's an appropriate use of funds in regard to people being denied reparations, I do understand that. But there's definitely a place for those unintentional victims of
they are unintentional.
Because the amount of therapy you'd need if you'd found out your dad was looking at kiddie porn.
I know, and it's you could just imagine the emotional devastation that goes with that.
It breaks
children, spouses, all this sort of stuff. Anyway, look, for what it's worth, I support this form of policing. You might say, "Oh, it's the same thing as the social." It's very different, different, and it actually is necessary. It doesn't take long, as Jeff told us, when he's sitting in a chat room posing as a sort of 12-year-old girl. It doesn't take long for men to come up and start making sexualized conversations and, proceeding on from that to more serious offending. Yeah. So I support it, what they call decoy policing. And it is fundamentally different to what the social media heroes are doing. There is an investigative process. There are known triggers leading to an arrest. And when arrests are made, those detained, forced to eat dog shit or be savagely beaten. They're treated with a level of dignity.
Well, yeah, due process.
Due process, indeed.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fucking ridiculous. Look, we really appreciate Jeff getting in touch with us.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
That was good. You had the conversation with him, but yeah, when he touched base and he was like, "Oh, you want to know something?" I'm like, "Yes, we do."
It was very, very good.
Yeah, very good. So outside of police jurisdiction and in the hands of self-appointed vigilantes, these disgusting crimes are not being reduced. But these fucking heroes are making a bad situation much worse and arguably more prolific and probably just training pedophiles how to get around decoys now. Great. Yeah.
I've spent weeks looking at these social media accounts. Can I stop now, please?
Yes, please stop. It's changed you. It's changed you for the worst.
Occasionally, very rarely, I'll see one that looks authentic and where the offender is treated reasonably well. But overall, there is a confluence of two things. Everyone hates pedos.
Uh-huh.
And social media is an ethical free zone where the most outrageous excesses are rewarded with the most views, which equals money, cash in the bank, cash in your pocket.
I really wish Elon Musk never bought Twitter. It's such a fucked up world. We don't need it to be any worse.
Please don't make it any worse. Stop doing this. And you just know, but when I say please don't, I'm not talking to listeners, of course, but to you fucking YouTubers, and please don't make this world any worse.
Put down the smartphone.
The issue around this is that because you can earn the thousands of dollars a month doing this sort of stuff, you just know it's going to proliferate.
Oh, totally, yeah.
And with all of those things, people getting shot, people being injured, people getting assaulted, all this sort of stuff's just going to continue and get worse. All right, you have been listening to the Conditional Release Program with your host, Jack the Insider, and Joel Hill. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, and if you've enjoyed our bullshit, throw us a 5-star review on your podcast app. We've got to rewrite
please,
that, Joel.
share
That's
our
pretty
shit.
old, isn't it? Yeah.
Now, Jack can be found on Twitter on @JackTheInsider, Joel on Crunchy Nose with a K. We don't really use it. But if you go on Facebook and look up the Conditional Release Program, you'll find our page. There's a shit posting group, which is really active. But please share us if you can on social media.
Send us an email.
Friends.
Send us an email, and we'll give you the email address in a minute. But the Conditional Release Program @gmail.com. We'll give it to you again in a minute. But yeah, that's a great way to get in touch with us.
Yeah, no, I grabbed them and I
You're not
forwarded them on
restricted
Jack,
to 140 characters, whatever the fuck it is, anyway.
Yeah, true. And yes, we do a Patreon, so please give us some money on that one as well. We'd appreciate that.
And the Patreon is up and running, as we said at the front of the show, and we ask listeners to consider throwing a few dollars our way.
Yes, for as little as $5 a month, you'll have access to all sorts of bonus content, and you'll feel warm and fuzzy for helping us out, knowing you're keeping the lights on. And if you do this for us, this small token gesture, we won't have to beg Elon for rent rubles. All of a sudden, I think Ukraine are the aggressors.
And what's that about? Is that about I think that was just from a previous episode.
Yeah, I'm cool with it.
Anyway, I don't know. Anyway, we're just about done, folks. And finally, all feedback, tips, and death threats should be sent to the Conditional Release Program @gmail.com, as we just said.
We did.
In the front of it. We would love to hear from you, even if it's to tell us we've been indicted for treason and will stand trial next to Ralphie Babbitt.
The actual worst part of that is standing next to Ralph
You need to
Babbitt.
get your elbows in, wouldn't you?
I just don't want to stand next to him.
He's a fat man,
He would smell so cologne-y. You'd get dizzy standing next to him.
He would
All that cologne.
Yeah. And he'd have the little pocket kerchief as well, wouldn't he?
Oh, he's such a fucking creep. Anyway, thanks, listeners. Appreciate your work.
Good on you, listeners. Thanks for that. See ya.
See you guys.
I don't think I ever want to talk to any of those people.
Fuck me! You guys are bastards!